Hello and welcome to the Gold Ghosts and Guns podcast. This is episode 201. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. It is January 7th, 2025. It's our second episode of the year. I did one with Dexter White the other day. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. But we've done Dexter now 3 or 4 times in a row, and I wanted to change things up a little bit. I wanted to have Alex Krainer back on the podcast. Alex and I talk all the time outside of the context of this podcast. So, having him on just the two of us without a third party or a fourth party or anybody else, this felt there was absolutely time to do so. So as always, the great Alex Krainer is here with us, and we're going to talk about, I want to talk about today is this obvious kind of plan or strategy, attack that's going on where Donald Trump has unleashed the Elon Musk on the European Union. And I want to get Alex's take on that and how that dovetails in with all the stuff that he talked about in his recent Substacks, which I absolutely recommend everybody read. He's furthered his thesis and argumentation about why the Bank of England is in serious, serious trouble. And I think that this whole situation with Musk and Trump dovetails into that really nicely. So, Alex, good morning. Or afternoon for you. Thank you for showing up as always, my friend. And how are you? And let's get started.
In one word, tired, but thank you for having me. Always fun to catch up with you, Tom. All things are good. I'm tired because the news cycle just won't give it a rest. It's just getting insane. It's hard to keep up with everything. And then you also have a day job, like you have to actually, you can't just spend the whole day reading the news and listening to podcasts.
Right.
So
I know. And I'll, to be honest with you, just to jump in, it's very clear that they're flooding the zone with as many
yes,
stories as possible. They're chumming the waters with as much as they possibly can in order to hope that something sticks. To me, that looks like desperation, and that kind of acceleration of what I think are really minor bits and pieces of news. But there are a lot of little bits of signal amidst all the noise that they're throwing out there. So.
yeah, fully agreed. There's even news that shouldn't be in the news. Like yesterday, I got in my inbox a breaking story from New York Times. The first person confirmed to have died from bird flu, and it's some 60-some-year-old person who died of bird flu. Now, when they say that the person died of bird flu, you know that they are extremely rigorous to prove that cause and effect is what they say it is. They wouldn't go out with a story just pulling it out of their backhand. And so that when they report something like this, it's just like truth, nothing but the truth, and only truth. But we're in the middle of the flu season,
Yeah.
and people get flu, and I got a flu, and pretty much everybody I know got a flu or a cold, at least something.
Mm-hmm.
And every year, a few tens of thousands of people die for whatever reason. And so a person dying of flu, even if you call it bird flu for some reason, isn't news.
No.
Yet the New York Times they make it a breaking news story. A big sensation. A person died of flu in January, right? And so, that's one of the things, but it's just one thing after another. Of course, it's not just a random piece of information that people should have on their radar. It's clearly aimed at generating fear. It's a psyop,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. Otherwise, a person dying of flu in January wouldn't be news because probably another few hundred died the same day, right?
Right.
And this is what we're dealing with. And now the very fact that I had to spend 3 minutes of this podcast talking about that tells you that they are flooding the zone, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
and we're being snowed under a blizzard of stupid, irrelevant, and above all, demoralizing and fear-inducing.
There you go.
Actually, things are okay.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
know, okay in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, there's problems, the crises are real, the risk of war is real, but I think it's actually receding. and we're going to be fine, especially the people who pay no attention to mainstream media.
Yeah, no, it's funny, I want to be, anxious and outraged, and I want to be worried because that's been my pretty much my modus operandi for, I don't know, 25 years, right? Maybe longer. Um, and I'm just not feeling it, man. Part of me just is like, yeah, whatever. Oh, look, somebody, oh, they're trying that again. I mean, there comes a point where it's, maybe I'll put it to you this way. For years, I used to react every morning. I'd get up every morning. I would get up and first thing I would do before I even make coffee, I would swipe over my computer and check the price of gold every freaking morning. And my entire daily mood was set based on what I saw in the opening markets, the early market, access markets, and the gold price. And after a while, and you would watch this, and then you get $40 price in the moving the price of gold, and I would freak out, and I change, and after a while, then I'm like, after a while, I just became inured to it. I just literally just became white noise. I'm like, oh look, gold moved $80. Oh, all right, what does that mean? Well, it means about this. When you get into a state of when you move from a state of kind of ignorance to a state of, I wouldn't say knowledge, but kind of acceptance that this is the way the world operates, and that these types of things that you see moving, because gold is such an important, I learned this through gold because it's such an important market, and it's an important market for setting everybody's expectations of what's going on, right? It's part of the narrative stream, that eventually I'm like, oh, no, I need to stop reacting to this, and I need to start thinking about what it actually means. And then once you can like see the code in that respect, you can go, oh, okay, well, it just means that. Okay, they're playing that game. And then you learn how to read the charts better, and you go, oh, well, it doesn't really make any difference. That move doesn't make any difference in the long-term technical sense. So they're just trying to write a headline this morning for whatever reason. And same thing with the New York Times, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA and MI6 and everything else. So I, yeah, they're clearly just trying to run the operation to try to revive the same kind of levels of fear that they had during COVID, right? So,
I think you bring up a point that is extremely important actually for the investor community
mhm.
because the things that make a difference in life, the things that are real events, real developments, real changes in the way the world is happen over periods of time that kind of eclipse our temporal scale. Because we have this mind, the way it's wired is very short term. Like if I kick a rock, it goes away. If I push on a button, something happens. So we always expect that the cause and effect are
Temporally aligned.
visibly related.
Mhm.
You can, and so when we look at things in the world and we think like, oh my God, this is happening there, and how should we interpret this? And whereas like in reality, some of these very, very important developments in the world take years, maybe decades to happen.
Mhm.
Okay, speaking of markets, let's say you look at the 1970s inflation, how long did that take? From the time it went above 5% to the time it fell back to 5%, it was nearly 16 years. And in those 16 years, we saw gold price go from 35 bucks an ounce to 800 and some bucks an ounce. And so these are things that, if you sat there in the 70s and you kind of saw inflation coming, you might have thought, oh, buy gold, buy silver, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And you wouldn't have been wrong. But the fact is that every time, every day you looked at the price of things in it wasn't on screen back then, it was in Wall Street Journal or something. The change was very incremental, and sometimes the change seemed random or opposite of what you would expect.
Right.
And then people will go like, "Oh my God, what does this mean?" Well, it doesn't mean anything. Events are close to random in the short term. They are real in the long term. And so I think that we all need to, as you suggested, we need to learn to relax,
Mhm.
to understand not which way the wind is blowing at the moment, but where is the big storm coming from.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean
Uh,
that dovetails with the way you analyze markets, right? Because
yep.
your
Yeah.
service is I compass trend following, right? So and you and I've had long conversations, both on and off camera about the way we approach markets, and they're very similar, even though we use different tools to achieve the similar things. I use a pure candlestick read, and then I use fractal um, time scaling, right? By moving in and out of time frames to apply a simple rule set or a simple set of heuristics to those to the candlesticks to get a sense of what's happening at the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly.
Mhm, mhm.
You use a trend system that is that's different, but is in effect does many of the same things, and so we're both and I'll be honest with you, Alex, it's because it's the kind of services that we're providing for our clients, right? I write a couple of monthly financial newsletters, the Gold, Goats, and Guns, and I also write one for Newsmax. It makes no sense to be reacting to the day to day movements in markets unless those day to day movements propagate through to the monthly or quarterly chart, right?
Right,
Otherwise,
right.
it's irrelevant. It's just noise. Like to a long term investor, the daily chart is no different than the 1 minute chart is to a day trader.
Yeah, yeah. But I think Tom, it's worse than irrelevant because
Mm,
the more reactive you are, this is an empirical fact, the more likely you are to underperform and to lose your money. Um, there was a very interesting study done at Harvard, I think, where a professor, I forget his name, but I have it somewhere in my book. Anyway, the guy divided a group of his students into two sets, and he gave them all an investment portfolio to manage, right? Each student individually. And one group followed the news every day and adjusted their portfolio accordingly. And the other group got no news whatsoever. And the group that had no news, uh, I think they performed something like double the group uh, that followed the news daily,
hmm
which is again, like being under this information blizzard nonstop makes you reactive, and the more you how do you call it, react, the more you trade, the more you um, second guess yourself.
hmm
Um, you end up usually uh, the worse off for it.
Yep.
And that's how the saying, trade the news, lose your shoes, is validated.
Yeah,
People
no,
knew it
you're.
forever. People knew it before the financial, the we had empirical data, but they knew that people who were overly busy, overly reactive, did worse than those. And my favorite example, when those things when stocks like Tesla or Nvidia go up 3, 4, 500 times in the space of 10 years. Of course, nobody does a 500 bagger.
Mm-mm.
Nobody makes 500-fold their investment on anything, because if you look at it and it's made 100%, you're thinking like, ooh, that was great. I should cash out. And if it's a 10 bagger, I mean, it takes nerves of steel to stay with it. And it's only the people who kind of buy it and forget that they have it in their portfolio who make that money. And my favorite story is a bunch of ladies in a Finnish village
Mm.
who uh, who all bought stock of Nokia because back then they had some savings. Back then, Nokia was making rubber boots. And so these ladies thought like, oh, everybody needs rubber boots, so this company is going to do great. So hey, let's put our savings there. So that's what they did. And then of course they forgot all about it. And then years go by, and at some point in the late 90s or early 2000s, they realized wait a minute, is this these phones that we're using, is that same company? And then they check their portfolios and turns out that they're all millionaires, they had
Right.
no idea.
Right. And no, that's a great story, Alex, because
Yeah.
it's exactly the kind of thing like, um, you think about, and I can tell you personally, people ask me all the time, like, like, you clearly do really well in the markets, just you make all these great calls and blah blah blah. Like, no, I don't trade. Like, I live literally off my cash flow, and I have very little invested in the markets because I know my own limitations as a person. I'm an inveterate bit twiddler. When I have a stake on the table, I then care about that stake, and I
Yeah,
start
yeah, yeah,
focusing
yeah.
on that. And even if it's 2 minutes a day or this or that, I check in. If I, it's like I have a little bit again, I'll cop to that. I have a little bit of money in the markets now, in retirement portfolios, but nothing. It pales in comparison to everything else, right? And what I was saying is that all I know is that the minute I start putting stakes on the table is the minute that I start thinking about this stuff and go, well, I can move in and out. I can trade. Like, no, stop. Don't do that. Just every once in a while, once a year, whatever, review the portfolio, wherever it is, make some strategic decisions about and update your thesis. If your thesis hasn't changed, if the trend hasn't changed, hey, I'm good. It's all
It's
good.
all
And I
good.
walk away
Yeah,
from it.
yeah, because
And it frees up that if
the
well,
moment you have chips on the table, the moment you're in the game, your emotional wiring gets involved, and that has a weight on your
yeah.
decisions, on your emotional life, on your attention span, on your focus, on everything.
Well, you only have
It
so much
affects you.
bandwidth.
So, when I stopped working as a hedge fund manager, because when you're a hedge fund manager, that's what you do.
Right.
That's what you do all day, every day, practically. And that's why you never get anything else done. Like I didn't get a lot of anything else done. I didn't write much. I didn't do anything
Hmm.
other than, that. And then when I quit in 2020, I was forced to quit in 2020 with the pandemic. I made a very deliberate decision, which I only um, reversed late last year, that I wouldn't trade anything at all anymore until, certain goals that I set for myself
Mm.
took root and started to, kind of generate some kind of results that I could say, like, okay, I accomplished something there. Because
Hmm.
I knew that if I continued to trade, that it would eat up the energy and the focus and the attention from other things I wanted to do. So
Hmm.
it's it really is a choice of the way of it's a choice of the way you want to be productive in life.
Yes.
And one of the things that I advocate with trend following, because trend following is a very actually non-involved type of investing, in the sense that you don't get trading decisions very frequently. It's just from time to time.
Hmm.
I've really tried to convey this to my clients, that other things in life are more important. This is the kind of thing that shouldn't take more than 20 minutes of your life. And there are better things to do to have what we call quality of life.
Hmm.
I did have a period of time when I was day trading, spending hours and hours and hours staring at the screen, anxious, always stressed out.
Hmm.
I absolutely hated it. I hated it.
Hmm.
I absolutely hated it. So I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. And this is in fact why I even built my model, because I thought, like, this is great. This is necessary. We have to do this because, if you don't generate returns, all your savings are slowly disappearing.
Right.
And so you have to speculate. You're obliged to, but it can't be allowed to ruin my life. So I need to build a machine that's going to do that for me. So, that's kind of been the path to glory thus far.
Well, the thing is, and this dovetails back in with what I originally wanted to talk to you about, because the what that does is it frees up the bandwidth to now look
Yeah.
at the bigger picture, and then you have the
Exactly.
bandwidth and you have the brain power to say, what does this mean? I've run into, early on in my career at Newsmax, so going back 10 years, almost 12 years now. And I started running into trouble with my original editor because she wanted me to write more about markets and buy stocks and do stuff, because that's a way of generating interest in the newsletter. I'm like, but that's not, I don't, what I see, how I see my role. My role here is to build a portfolio for the long term that I can check in on and then keep people informed of the things that inform the choices that have been made. And then the choice of stock, of what stocks to buy and to put in a portfolio, becomes axiomatic. So
Yeah.
the machine that I built is the ability to is a kind of a mental heuristic of how to read the news and to read
Yeah.
the geopolitical news flow in order to make sense of these things. Especially now, again, I say that knowing that we live in times that are geopolitically incredibly intense, and so for that reason, markets aren't real. They're not. They're almost wholly fake at a certain level. You have to get, if you just follow the news flow. So you have to get beyond that to understand what the real world is. And the real world is that markets bow to politics because we live in, a highly politicized world. Until we get to a day where markets are not dominated by politics, can we go back to, caring about things like, I don't know,
You're right.
PEs and price to sales and book ratio and all this other happy horse, which
Yeah.
I would appreciate. Because, and by the
Yeah, that would be
way,
nice.
by the way, and I would be, and I'd probably be terrible at it, to be honest with you. And if we got back to that world, I'm like, well, job's done here. I don't have the skills to be built for this. Like in some ways, this
No,
is
you
what,
wouldn't. You wouldn't, Tom, because you're one of the few people that I know who has figured out the role of the Federal Reserve. And I still think that even in the best of times, it's the Federal Reserve who's driving the markets primarily,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not, I'm just, what I'm saying, Alex, is that, there are guys out there who have real comparative advantage over me and over many of us for reading balance sheets and doing some of parts, and they have MBAs and they're good at this stuff, and some of them are just better, and they would probably outperform me in a market that wasn't designed to serve the political interests and
Well,
of oligarchs and of patriarchs. So
okay, Tom, sorry to
that's fine.
stop you there, but this discussion needs comic relief. If you're bothered, if you're bothered by that, then you have to sit back and ask yourself, what would Tonya Harding do?
That's hilarious, dude. And that is kind of where we are, or at this point, what would Klaus Schwab do, right? So, and you'll notice that Schwab is kind of fading into the background. So let's now get back into what I originally want to talk to you about, which is that it dovetails with what we talked about. We've talked about many times before, which is the centrality of the changes that are happening within the United Kingdom, and it's becoming the fulcrum on which kind of the future of Western both capital markets and political markets, for lack of a better term, are hinged. So I'm watching Elon Musk, who after stepping in it with the whole H-1B visa thing with his buddy Vivek, um, be wrangled in by Donald Trump and then sent like a freaking missile over at Keir Starmer, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and then insert himself into the German election process as well. And that to me screams like a strategic play here. So I'm going to get your take on that, because I have many thoughts on it. I've talked about it in other venues, but I wanted to tee it up for you to talk about.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Tom. This can't be random because if you read Elon Musk's tweet, and let's face it, Elon Musk is now part of the incoming government, so he's not just a guy with a Twitter account with a large following who happens to be the owner of the platform who just like vents his whatever his
Spleen.
peeve of the day is. This is strategic, and the 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 tweets he posts aiming at Keir Starmer and the British government are nothing short of spectacular. I mean, they are heavy duty stuff.
Yes, they
And
are.
this one thing that we've learned over the past few years that this empire is extremely narrative driven.
Hmm.
They almost couldn't care less what the reality is, so long as they can contrive the narrative that they want and convince all of the rest of the world that that's the truth. So
Yep.
now, the man with the most powerful following on social networks has taken aim at Starmer, and he's like shooting, Oreshniks at him, pretty much. I have no idea what the consequences of this are going to be, but I'm convinced that it's not random, it's
Mhm.
deliberate. And in a way, I find it redeeming because how long have you and I, Tom, been talking about all roads leading to London? That
Many.
London is the heart of darkness,
Hmm.
that that's where it's at. And, like the, how do you call it? The way the parasite is entrenched in humanity's business is through London and in London. That's the Mordor.
Hmm.
And so the fact that Elon Musk of all people has taken them on fearlessly, and this is a very, very dangerous beast. If you made a list of people they assassinated over the centuries, starting with not starting with, but already, Abraham Lincoln and many others. It's very, very long. They're extremely ruthless. They're very, very brutal.
Hmm.
In spite of their, sophisticated diction and British accent and all of this, the establishment is extremely brutal.
Hmm.
So this tells me that changes are a coming, and that the incoming Trump administration has taken the correct aim.
Hmm.
And so it's going to be extremely interesting. I don't know what's going to happen,
Right.
but I know that something is going to happen, and I know that, our children and grandchildren are going to be reading about this in history books.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So it was funny, Alex, is the when I started to think about it, I watched Musk to go after Starmer. Um, it was it was almost revelatory because it at the same time he started getting into German politics at the same time, saying AFD is the only choice for for the future of Germany. And then you step back from that and you put it all together and you're saying, okay, what's happening here is that Elon Musk, if you go back about a year ago when Thierry Brayton and the EU were going after Twitter whole hard, whole hog before the Trump assassination attempt on July 13th, they were fully planning on bankrupting Musk. Like the Biden administration was going to take out Tesla and SpaceX. The EU was going to take out Twitter through fines and all the rest of it, and they were going to hang Elon Musk on the on his petard of being a free speech advocate, which they probably have a strong enough psychological profile on him to know that he's very thin-skinned, he's very reactive, he's got imposter syndrome, all these things that Dexter White and I talked about in the last episode he and I did together. And then you put that together and you say, okay, we know we have a plan on which to destroy Elon. And we're going to not only are we going to turn him from the world's richest man, we're going to turn him into the world's poorest man. And we're going to steal everything from him that because how dare he? We made him. So how dare he decide to get fuck you money by cashing out $42 billion worth of his Tesla shares, buying Twitter, and then setting the table for his tech bros to overthrow our technocratic um, more perfect technocratic union that we have on plan and substitute theirs. Like that's the plan. So it was clear that he had to hitch his wagon to Donald Trump after Trump survives Butler, Pennsylvania, and then go all in because he had no other option. And now he's doing the thing. And if you look at it, Trump and Musk, in my opinion, are motivated now not just by a sense of civic duty or anything else, but the thing that's really animating them, which is revenge. You have the fucking balls to to try to debank my wife. I'm thinking about Trump or ban Trump. they went after all of these people in the interim, and we didn't talk, and no one, and the Trump didn't make a big deal out of it. He didn't, scream it to the high heavens or anything, but they went after his entire freaking family. Musk, they tried to take out Tesla multiple different ways with advertising boycotts and everything else. I'm like, you know what, dude, fuck you. We're going after you, and we're going to take you out. And you want to play that game? You can play that game. So watching them go on the offensive, which is the right choice. I think right after the election, you and I talked about it on a couple of podcasts we did. And I know I talked about it with Dexter White. And I said, you have to set the tempo here, Trump and company. You can't let them set the tempo for you and be reactive. You have to put them on their back foot at every turn. You have to put the media on the back foot. You have to put the oligarchy on their back foot. And we'll take care of the media, because the media is easily taken care of, because we've got 4chan and, the autistes of the world, that can debunk these people in 3 minutes. You got to go on the offensive, and doing so, and you have to accelerate the going on to the offensive coming into the inauguration. And I think that's what they've done. And it's fucking up all their plans, dude. And it's great. I've never seen anything like it in all the years that I've been following these markets and these events this way.
Yes, I agree. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this at all. I think maybe since the American Revolution. I would say, I think it's more than just revenge.
Yeah.
Because what they have done to Trump and his family so far is a minor inconvenience compared to what they would do to him if they vanquished him.
Right.
And that is, if we go back in history to the U.S. Civil War, obviously we're talking about different people, but we're talking about the same structures of power and the same family dynasties. And they wanted to break up the United States. They wanted to break up the Union, create two weak client states that they could pit one against the other.
Yep.
A balkanization of the United States, and preserve their primacy as the full spectrum dominant nation. The new British century. And it was the Russian Tsar who helped Abraham Lincoln preserve the Union, Alexander II. Okay, so very shortly after that, Alexander II gets assassinated, but they're not content with this. They're not content with just assassinating their nemesis. They are so extremely vengeful that then in 1917, their own Bolsheviks, whom they funded and organized, round up the whole Tsarist family and execute them all, women, children, the whole thing. And we know now that that execution was ordered out of New York by Jacob Schiff, the agent of the Rothschilds in New York. And so, I think that what Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy and Vivek Ramaswamy are doing now is that they're putting themselves at that same risk, because these fuckers in London, they will want to end their lines, not just you're all proud of me there.
Yes, I got you to swear. I'm really proud. I'm sitting there, I swear. Sorry, yeah. I couldn't help myself. You guys can't see this. We're doing we have video and you guys don't, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, I could see your approving face expression. No, but anyway, like they will want to destroy these people and their families and end their lines. So this is the struggle. It's not just I'll get back to you for debanking my wife.
Sure.
No, we have to root you out completely and end your lines and completely destroy you. This is, I mean, unless Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of these people aren't quite aware what they've gotten themselves into. But I do think that they are. It does seem to me that they're extraordinarily well informed. For Elon Musk to be attacking Starmer in London
Hmm.
this viciously, they gotta understand who they're targeting and what the stakes are.
Yeah, no, it's
So,
really interesting.
yeah,
Let me just add one more point to that. So two things. One, what I meant by the revenge thing was that was the it's not the only thing. It was the thing that pushed them over the edge. Like
yeah.
that's what's giving the energy. That's the activation energy, right? To maintain this, right? There's like that's the core of it, right? And the same thing. And so that what you just described is why I think you could also make the argument that Musk is going after Nigel Farage because Farage has always been. I mean, I love Nigel, but at the same time, I think Farage has always been questionable because he always makes these very questionable political moves. It may just be that Nigel doesn't have the stomach for this kind of politics, or it may be that Farage has always been my job is to be the anti-Davosian element within the British hierarchy representing City of London to get the Americans to keep the Americans on the leash. And Musk going after Farage was a big discordant move. And it it Musk going after Farage tells me they know the parameters of the problem. Because remember, I've always, as we've gone on over the years, I've fine tuned my analysis to say we've got Davos and we've got the British remnant, and those two things are not the same group of people. And Starmer clearly represents the EU and continental European globalists. And at the same time, we have British globalists. Now, they're both aligned with the idea that they need to get rid of the Russians and the Americans, but one of them wants to be in charge when this is all over. And if you map I'm just throwing it out there. If you map Farage to the old British remnant, then it makes sense that that Musk is going after both of them and saying, no, we're taking out the whole fucking kit and caboodle. This is the real American Revolution, and
uh,
that's where we are.
this is maybe the final battle because
Mm-hmm.
apparently the American Revolution was never finalized
Mm-hmm.
as and World War II was never finished, and
Nope.
I think we're watching it all going to its final to the grand finale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I've observed Nigel Farage for good many years. He says a lot of the right things and then does a lot of questionable things. So, and the British pretty much invented the concept of controlled opposition, where they always have the shadow government or the B team and the C team.
Mm-hmm.
And when the going government becomes completely unacceptable to the people, then they give them the next one, which is exactly as controlled as the first one. And then if that doesn't work, they have the third one, which is exactly as controlled as the first two. So it makes sense to me that probably Farage is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in Britain, if you want a real opposition, I think you have to go to people like Andrew Bridgen, Jeremy Corbyn, possibly. Okay, now I'm blanking out. The mother of all talk shows,
George
George
Galloway.
Galloway.
Right.
George Galloway. Uh, I'm not even sure about him.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is he's a very public person, so he has to probably be very careful about things he does say and things he doesn't say. So, but I do think that he's real opposition as well.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else, everybody who even has a snowball's chance in hell of getting anywhere near the seat of power is probably controlled opposition. And you saw what happened to both Galloway. You saw what happened to both Galloway and to Andrew Bridgen. They got
Mm-hmm.
completely disenfranchised
Yep.
by complete nobodies in a completely rigged electoral system.
Right. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, right? Because I've been saying for years, I remember chatting with Alexander Mercouris over at Duran years ago and bringing up that, Alex, y'all need an Oliver Cromwell moment, right? And Alex would nod his head vigorously saying yes. And I would, and at the time, and maybe my naivete or whatever you want to say, I say, well, is Nigel Farage that figure? And what he reminded me of was that Oliver Cromwell was a nobody and just came out of nowhere and then showed up effectively, started a grassroots moment, a movement, and then just took over parliament. And that you're and Alex's point was that if that happens in the United Kingdom, it's going to be out of left. It's going to be someone completely out of left field that's on nobody's radar. And that's, I think, a point to Alex Mercouris's credit. Because every time I watch the machinations within British politics, I'm reminded of that conversation that he and I had probably 2018 that we had this conversation. So it stuck with me, what now, almost 7 years. So it's something I'd bring up there. So yeah, I mean, it's very obvious that this has to happen because this dovetails again. Maybe it's confirmation bias on my part. I'm perfectly willing to cop to that, but hey, somebody out there, tell me I'm wrong. But this makes perfect sense with my analysis of SOFR, the Fed, the banking system, the way these things have all played themselves out, and now it's here we are in 2025, and we're getting a restoration of American sovereignty, or the first, maybe the first establishment of American sovereignty since the Civil War. What is commonly referred to as the Civil War, and what we here in the South like to call the recent unpleasantness. So maybe, and I'm always reminded of the statement about from the Chinese foreign minister. I can't remember his name, who said, he was asked once, what do you think about the French Revolution? And he said, well, it's too early to tell. And this was, during the Vietnam War, or the 1970s or whatever. And I'm like, it's the same thing with the American Revolution. I said this before, and I'm just reminding everybody to bring this back up. The American Revolution, as you pointed out, hasn't really ever ended because we've never really had control over our financial destiny in the United States. We've always been at the vicissitudes of our trade relationship with Europe and how that has affected our banking system. And we're at the cusp of what could possibly be a very different world because of it. You're on mute, Alex.
Yes, I agree. And I think that today we have a far better awareness of all these things. Abraham Lincoln used to say that he is facing Confederate armies in his front and the banking establishment in his back, and of the two, he thought that the banking establishment was much more dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, he proved to be right. And I think that almost immediately after the Civil War had ended and they assassinated Lincoln, that the same banking parasites started to burrow their way back into the United States. And they've done so successfully because, they do their work covertly. It's very hard to identify who they are, how they move. Everything is done secretly below the surface. Agreements are done. Well, we have that very famous speech by John F. Kennedy about the evil monolithic conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that speech go? I don't recall it off the top of my head, but it's pretty much spot on.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say what the conspiracy is or who the conspirators are, but I think it's pretty clear that it's the banking establishment, and I think that what you and I have been talking about for so many years now, the head of the monster is still in the city of London. Everything else is a satellite.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the struggle that's before us is not only to disenfranchise these people, but we have to really re-evaluate and reimagine and redesign a new monetary system, the one that's more conducive to human productivity and happiness and prosperity and standards of living. And in other words, Tom, and I know you're not going to take this well, but we have to build back better.
Oh no, we absolutely do. I love using their phrases and turning them on their head. Like I think that's a I think
Exactly.
Alex, using their language to destroy them is the best revenge we could possibly
Yeah, because
engage in with.
they pay a lot of really smart, talented people a lot of money to come up with this bullshit, and then to just steal it from them. There's something delicious about that,
I know,
isn't
no, they're
there?
absolutely. This is you want to hang them. They always say the capitalism will sell you the rope that they'll use to hang themselves with. Well, I got news for you. We're going to do the same thing. Oh, by the way, we're good capitalists and we're going to hang you guys. We're going to hang the Marxists. Like these people are all freaking Marxists. And Marxism, and at this level of discussion, like all the isms don't really matter. This is about power.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this is about power. And when I go on my rants about communism, I'm doing it in order to identify the way people have been bamboozled into thinking about how the divide and rule play is played in front of you. Like it's capitalism versus communism is a false dichotomy. It's designed to, I mean, don't get me wrong. Communism and thinking, the thinking is evil. I'm never going to argue this point. Like, and not saying that there's great that unfettered capitalism. I'm not even sure what I mean by that anymore. That's the discussion of an entire podcast because it's so friggin' weighted with dross for like an emotional weight. What I'm getting at here is that fight, the way it's been framed, is false. It's all
Yes.
designed to pit us against each other for no other
Yes,
reason than to
exactly.
allow them to go ahead and continue to do their build their architectures and their infrastructures behind the scenes in order to maintain their power. That's it. Everything else is irrelevant. And in some ways they reduce everything to a false black and white in order to divide us. Well, guess what? We have to, in some ways, every once in a while, we have to use their same tactics to identify their false, to identify what they're really trying to do. This is a divide and rule play. Ignore it, move on. The whole illegal versus illegal immigration nonsense that Vivek and Musk got themselves into. That was that they stepped in it. It was amplified. They made mistakes in it, and then it was used to absolutely never let a crisis go to waste. Never let Elon, and never let Elon's imposter syndrome go to waste, and then blow it up into something in order to try and create civil war within the quote unquote MAGA movement. It's absolutely what that was about. It can be both things at the same time. They can be wrong. He and Vivek could be wrong fundamentally about H-1B, and it still be an operation. Those two things can be true at the same time. And actually, that's probably more explanatory than anything else. So, again, this is revelation of the kind of method of how you have to think about these things. This issue is minor in the end, grand scheme of things in the long run. We're not even going to care about it in a month. I'm more interested in, but watch the way they play. They use that same set of tactics to divide AFD from Germans, and the way they're going to try and the way Starmer is using policy to divide Britons, and the way they're trying to they know they need to create they have to turn Trump into the villain. For the
Yeah.
people who currently think that Trump is the hero, Trump has to become the villain. And that's everything they're doing is in service of that. Everything they're flooding the zone with, everything they're doing is designed to do that. So even when you see stupid shit like Joe Biden issuing a flurry of executive orders banning, pardoning a whole bunch of rapists and giving out the medals of freedom to George Soros and Hillary Clinton and banning gas-powered on-demand water heaters and all that. That's all designed to gum up the works, get you angry, put that stuff on Trump's agenda to fix, and to keep in the back of your mind and keep tickling the back of your lizard brain that Donald Trump is possibly a threat and maybe even works for them. Bullshit. That's to rob you of your reason. It's to rob you of what you're seeing and turn reality into a false reality. That's what they do. And if you're confused about that, I invite you to spend the next 6 months checking out of the news cycle and reading the entire canon of Philip K. Dick. You will have it emblazoned deeply into your brain, and you will burn new neural pathways that will allow you to help see this the way I'm seeing it now. I'm presenting it to you now.
I think I couldn't agree more with you, Tom. Completely on the same page on this stuff. But you know, I do believe that they are all of their tactics, all of this stuff that they're doing has a shorter and shorter half-life, you know.
Yes,
It's failing faster and faster and faster, and it's incredible to see.
it is.
If you go back and you remember that they tried to build Bill Clinton into this rock star,
Right.
and then they tried to build Barack Obama into this rock star, and many other people, and none of it worked. People can't stomach these people.
Oh, they tried it with Kamala Harris. Look how badly
They,
that played out.
oh gosh, yes, they tried to build her up into some kind of a joy, joy,
Sure.
and it failed.
Mhm.
It's I Well, I find it perplexing because on two accounts. A, I ask myself, are they that stupid? Can that be? And then B, is the pool of talent that they can dip into to find recruits to prepare them to make them their candidate. Is it that shallow? Is it that small that they can't come up with better than Kamala Harris and Justin Trudeau and Keir Starmer and Olaf Scholz?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at the people in the West that come to power, they're an extremely unimpressive bunch.
They really are.
And they're wielding almost unlimited amounts of money. Their resources are almost unlimited, yet they are failing. Isn't that spectacular, in fact?
It is.
I find that, I sometimes sit back and I think, how do you even fail from that position? And not to forget, it was 30 years ago that they had this unipolar moment in which they really ruled the world, in which everybody really thought that the West was invincible, that, that that idiot Fukuyama wrote the end of history, and everybody pretty much believed in that narrative. And here we are. They're like the edifice is really crumbling before our eyes. And I think it's wonderful because the edifice was actually our prison. It was the prison matrix built
Mhm.
for us. So the fact that it's crumbling is, I think, infinitely gratifying and infinitely encouraging. And to participate in that is, I think, the gift I never would have expected.
Mhm.
I guess it's a beast that we get to kill by 1 million or 100 million cuts. And the fact that I get the chance to put in my little cut in there, I'm I'm thinking like, oh man, was I meant to be here?
Yeah. No, you, yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way, Alex. It's a privilege, honestly, to
Yeah,
be in
privilege.
the
That's the word.
positions
Yeah.
that we're in the small way that we're affecting the zeitgeist to, because again, it's the thing, Elon Musk is going to have to learn that free speech is not something you just tweet about. Free speech and freedom of expression and being a real honest to God truth teller means having a really fucking thick skin.
Yeah.
And it means inviting it means almost inviting the kind of criticism that you that normal people just shy away from. But the point of in order to move the needle, you have to not just like come up with crazy shit to say that gets people's attention, but you have to speak truth in a way that is a lightning rod to other people who don't have the or don't feel at that moment in time that they have the rhetorical skills or the presentation skills or whatever to go, yeah, no, that guy's saying what I need to hear or what I think. And then you give them hope, you give them strength, you give them the ability to go out and you give them argument, you give them energy. And that's what grass movement free speech is really about. And watching the coalescence of the strong voices within our space into this kind of, I say, it's not an echo chamber. It's absolutely something that reverberates much larger than it hits way above its weight, punches way above its weight.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating to watch. It's a privilege to be a part of. And and every time I take that step back and look at it and go, yeah, we did that, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Okay, what are we doing tomorrow? And you get up in the morning, and you're
Exactly.
like, cool. What are we gonna do
Exactly.
tomorrow to
Yeah.
fuck these people up? Like, yes, okay. And
Yeah.
then you keep yourself as grounded as possible. You keep your people. I have a community around me that helps to keep me grounded and everything else. And I've got a partner that absolutely does that. And it's important because you have to keep your eyes on the prize that's in front of you, and don't
Yeah.
get sucked into that ego form that they literally want to offer you. And you can watch it happen to other people. Now, one other point about the one last thing, and I'll turn the microphone back over to you, was because you touched on this. Is like the group of people that they have instantiated, they put in place: Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, Keir Starmer, Kamala, first Joe Biden, or first Obama, then Biden, then Harris, and others. These people were all chosen. Like I did a couple of podcasts with Dave Collin, and he was, going over this. He reiterated some stuff that Candace Owens was talking about with Kamala Harris being MK Ultra, like exhibiting all the signs of having been groomed at that level. That she's got real, honest to God, like personality ticks that are odd, and
Yeah.
take that for whatever it's worth. But Justin Trudeau's got the same. When you dig into his history, you realize that he's got that kind of. So these plans are 50, 60 years old. So when I go back and I talk about how there's a Gantt chart over at Evil Corp Central, I mean that Gantt chart is that old, folks. And so this is
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is the team they built. And you go to
Yeah.
war with the team. You go to win the Stanley Cup with the team you got, not the team that you can't fix. The core of the team. You only tinker around the edges of the trade deadline in order to win the cup. And they didn't make the right moves at the trade deadline. Let's just put it that way. So,
Yeah.
and they're flaming out in the second round. That's what I say. Like they're a classic President's Trophy winner in the NHL that is going to flame out in like the first or second round because they're not built for the real fight. And because that real fight is against a team that's far deeper with talent than they ever expected. They thought they could just sideline all the talent. So,
And for the other team, it's existential.
mm,
For these people, it's also existential, but
yeah, it is.
they chose an obsession which never had to be. Never, when you've cornered so much wealth of the world that you start thinking of yourself as a different species, and you start thinking that you have certain attributes of God, and that you can retire God,
Yes.
and that shaping the evolution of life is now up to you. Then you start doing a lot of this shit that doesn't need to be done. You're just doing it because you can, except the people that you're doing it to are fighting against you with everything they've got, whereas you're half-assed because even something deep inside you knows that you need to be losing this battle.
Mm,
And one of the things over these last couple of years has been the discovery that very often they commit to gambits that are patently stupid, but they go forward with it anyhow for some reason. I don't even understand why, because, and then you dig into it and you realize that these are plans that were formulated 20, 30, 50 years ago at the time when maybe they kind of made sense in some kind of futuristic, you didn't really know how exactly the world was going to shape.
Right.
So you made certain assumptions,
Hmm.
and in the framework of those assumptions, your evil plan almost even made sense, except 50 years later, the world is a little bit different than what you thought it was going to be. So
Yep.
your plan from 50 years ago no longer makes sense,
Yep.
but they still go with it anyhow.
Hmm.
And this is example after example after example. And the first one I came across was the story of Theranos. And I was
Oh, yeah, yeah.
astonished by, you had Henry Kissinger involved and George Shultz and
Mhm.
Mad Dog Mattis and all of these like top of the crop of this deep state swamp. They were all in it, and they were all people with lifetime in the swamp. So, maybe they're evil, but they know their shit, right? They have
Right.
certain experience in life. They know how the plumbing is arranged. And they went with this cockamamie nonsense that, if you had if you finished high school and you looked into this, you realize this was completely insane. They
Hmm.
went with it anyhow. They like spent $700 million on it before they had to flush it down the toilet anyhow.
Right.
And I mean, so many years, like more than 12 years that they ran this thing. And then the pandemic. And then, but it's just one, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of all of them. But well, Ukraine, that was never going to work. They went ahead with it anyway. And anyway, like one of the things I wanted to get back to I mean, I wanted to um um English, please. A One of the things I wanted to follow up on, that's
Follow
that's
up
the
on. There you go. Sorry.
one of the things I want to follow up on what you were discussing a few minutes ago was that, a lot of, because it circles back to that thing of day-to-day events are
Mm.
nearly random, but the long, the real events, the real changes are, they span an interval of time.
Yes.
And sometimes the day-to-day event could scare the lights out of you, and you don't necessarily see what's going to come of it. But then in the fullness of time, uh, things are okay. And example, the pandemic, when it happened,
Yep.
it was a horrible thing to live through. Um, but then it imploded.
Yep.
Ukraine war, what's going on in the Middle East, all of
Hmm.
these things. I think we're watching the process of the old, obsolete structures collapsing on themselves. But the real changes we're talking about are going to grow up kind of endogenously from the ground up, and that takes time.
Hmm.
And it always takes me back to that Confucian proverb where Confucius said, when a big tree falls, it falls with great noise and a lot of destruction.
Yep.
But the seeds grow without a sound. They grow in silence.
Hmm.
And so this is, I think, what we're looking at. The old structures are crashing, and this is creating a lot of noise and destruction. It's attracting our attention. It's mesmerizing. You almost can't take your eyes off it.
Hmm.
And every so often, something in that collapse is going to look so scary. A lot of people are going to feel tempted to extrapolate it to as a straight line to somewhere awful.
Right.
And then you forget to mind the seeds. It's the seeds that are growing that are changing everything, that are completely going to change the face of reality. And those seeds is a couple of billion of us, you know, driven from the heart, uh, driven by God, and doing what needs to be done. And I think that for once we're being led well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and again, and we're doing this actually, what's really interesting, Alex. And and that was a beautiful thing that you just said. And I think we'll kind of wrap up on some of these ideas. But we're doing this in the face of a a system and a structure of how we communicate with each other, which is literally driving us insane. Like these screens and the blue light and the this and that. You start looking at all of these things, and the whole way we interface with the world is literally driving us to levels of schizophrenia that we haven't, and we're doing that in spite of all of that. You know what I mean? I think there's a certain level of, there's a whole anxiety creation engine that exists. We're all part of it. And yet we're all commenting on it while we're doing it because some of us are, and we're doing our best to retain our humanity while understanding that we're part of these multiple overlapping anxiety-inducing psychological operations.
Yeah.
That actually really tells you just how fucking amazing people truly are.
Yeah. Amen.
And that is, I think, what ultimately drives my ability to get to sleep at night.
Yeah, amen to that. Why don't we just shut it off right now?
Well, we'll do so. So, Alex Krainer, as always, it's just an absolute pleasure and a bomb to get to hang out with you, dude. To remind everybody, Alex and I are going to be in Calgary in May, on May 10th at Sean Newman's Cornerstone Forum in Calgary. And we would love to see you, as many of you there as humanly possible. And we'll be there for a few days around I know I will be. And my wife and I are going to take some time to explore the wilds of northern Canada, so Western Canada. So where the seed there of real Canadian freedom really looks like it's taking root. So I hope to see everybody there, and I can't wait to do this again this year because every time we do, I get to hang out with Alex in person, and that's always just like the best part of my year.
Yeah.
So
Amen to all that, Tom. Always a privilege to join you. Great fun to chat. And for everybody who can come up to Canada, don't be square, be there.
All right, man. You take care. You have a great day, and we'll talk
you
soon.
Too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 201 of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. I want to thank Alex Krainer for taking the time, as always. It's always great to chat with Alex. It's always just a lovely kind of stress-free conversation, and I really do appreciate Alex's thoughtfulness and everything else. So with that said, you can follow me at Twitter on TFL1728. You can follow Alex on Twitter at NakedHedgie. And you can follow the rest of the work over at my blog at tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Patreon. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns. With that said, I'm out. Until the next time, you guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.